We are at EarthX and we're going to talk with Manisha Priyadarshini. She's the Executive Director and co-founder of Program Earth. Welcome to EarthX, Manisha. Tell me, what is Program Earth?
Well, first I want to say hello from my ancestors. So, Johar, Taigwe, Jurriaan. Program Earth is all about amplifying indigenous-led, nature-based solutions so that we can remediate the water, the land, so that more reforestation can happen, more water replenishment can happen. And we do that across 2.6 million acres today across the United States, Brazil, and India.
And you have a big, you already mentioned that, connection with the indigenous traditions. Um, that's one part of your mission, but I think that artificial intelligence is the other part. And these seems to be very far apart. So how do you bring that together?
I like to say and echo people before me who have talked about how indigenous communities inform AI with another AI, which is ancestral intelligence. And that is known other places as bioregional knowledge, as traditional ecological knowledge. But, in the age of AI, we are swimming in data, but we might not actually have the relationality to inform the future of what we're monitoring. And that's where some of that ancestral intelligence can come into play.
So what do you learn from ancestral intelligence? What can we learn, all of us, from that?
Yeah, in the particular space we play, it's called biochar. And biochar is essentially taking invasive biomass, turning it into a soot or a substrate, applying it like a fertilizer on soil so that it extracts hard metals and then leaves behind water moisture. However, this is a pretty tedious and long-term process. And most people are not able to raise enough funds for them to actually show its efficacy in terms of like soil monitoring and IoT sensors or digital twins, right? Now, what ancestral intelligence does for us is one, it helps identify really strategic places of application. Two, it allows us to understand the relationship between native plant species and invasive plant species so that we can use that biomass more efficiently and really reduce the cost of what we're working with. And lastly, one of my favorites is what we call biodiversity indicators. Often, usually within 6 months of applying something like biochar, you'll actually start to see like macroinvertebrate responding far before you will see it through your monitoring. So whether that's like earthworms in our West Bengal pilot or the caddisflies in Utah in the Bluff region, all of these are ways for us to monitor the land in a way where we can show success and then raise funds in a way where we've already showed our efficacy. So I believe that in a time where, capital is flowing differently, we can be really creative with our ancestral knowledge and really lower the cost and the barrier of these solutions.
So ultimately the success of changes in taking care of the land and all of that depends on the economic model, right? If it's better money making for farmers and people who work the land, then it will be easy. So tell me how you can make, if you like, money, how you turn it into a good business model.
Yeah, I think today there's this maybe, like, I think sometimes we put ourselves in a box where we think in order to create biochar, it's going to take a 15 or $20 million firm. that has a large enough pyrolysis, or in layman's term, burning facility. And I think when we look at this particular economic model, when we're looking at this community-led biochar or kilns, we're already reducing the costs from the infrastructure itself. A community-based kiln can actually be between $2,000 to $5,000, which is drastically different
Yeah.
than a $15 or $19 million firm. So your return looks very different. Working with local nonprofit partners like the Nature Conservancy or the Bears Ears Partnership, for example, in Bluff, we're able to make it where the biomass is actually delivered to the community and transportation isn't something that they have to really account for. Now, when you look at the actual application and what does that mean in terms of revenue generation, there's a few avenues that we explore, right? One, this aligns really well with statewide watershed plans. Almost every division of water quality is looking for something that's cost effective, and the numbers we ran are usually music to their ears. So there's a lot of public sector grants that are available. Secondly, you also have, you're bringing back the practice of regenerative farming, which has been lost in a lot of these areas because whether it was the water retention was really low, there were contaminants, in the soil, so that creates its own fear of like, is, the food even like something that we can eat? So, all of those kind of bring back the regenerative farming, and then, down the line, there is definitely that avenue for if the community wants to look at carbon crediting or water credits, but that's something that Program Earth, we're pretty agnostic. Our goal is to set up these pilots, to set up those first rounds of monitoring to really validate what's going on. And then, ultimately it's all about the community's sovereignty of which models they want to scale.
But it helps, biochar helps, fertilize the land, doesn't it? So it will also help increase their yields of whatever they will be farming.
Yes. Regenerative farming is a huge outcome of this. And some of the most exciting things has also been the reclamation of native crops, like in West Bengal when we were bringing back the wild rice, or in Bluff as we are preparing to return native peach and native corn and native spinach for the Navajo and the Mountain Ute communities. It's, I think we often focus on the economic model because that's going to create that level of sustainability. But I also think what is really interesting about revitalizing the cultural components through the farming, as you mentioned, is it also means that more people in rural communities want to stay in their community. Usually, especially in the Four Corners, you have 20 to 30% of the young folk leave for economic opportunities elsewhere. But the sense of cultural revitalization and an economic sustainable model makes it so that people have more pride to stay, even if the income is maybe lower than what you would get in a city. It's that pride of I'm carrying forth a legacy. So I don't know where that falls in our calculus, but it's definitely something worth mentioning and recognizing and hopefully funding.
How long have you been working on Program Earth?
So I often say that our purpose is a mosaic of our experiences. And while Program Earth itself was founded about 7 years ago, this work has been lifelong.
Yeah.
Actually, very much inspired by my grandma. She used to say that the world is lost if there's more value in our sacred sal trees being cut down than while they are still living. And she was specifically talking to how our sacred trees would be cut down for furniture, and that was why it was so valuable. But for us, not only was it something that we recognized as being a key part of the mangrove and part of sustaining the marine life, but it was also very deeply embedded in our culture, as in, like, the leaves were part of our marriage ceremonies, they were part of our harvest ceremonies. And that value could not really be quantified. And so she really inspired me to try to see how we can help the world see the value of plant life while it's living, while it's still in the ground, and maybe how, when we do have to burn it, how that's still better for the ground.
So you are clearly on a mission that you live your passion, you live your mission, and that I can hear that from the way you talk. But share with me the dream that you may have accomplished 10 years from now. What would that look like?
I mean, Jurriaan, I'm hoping that the water crisis has been completely averted. I'm hoping for a time where there is an abundance when it comes to the water, the food. People are staying within their communities, but also sharing their communal practices in a way where we don't have resources that are just centralized in one place, where people have been able to restore a relationship with nature and remember that they are nature that wants to be with nature. And so often I think of that as many, many, many different leaders that have kind of come to be through these different experiments that we've led. It's maybe different forms of energy that we've been able to find are viable through the biofuels. It's having access to the land for many people outside of just commercial uses. And a lot of what we talk about is, like, we're creating an interconnected village. We often think about the globalization, and we think about that often as trade, but what does that look like if we were to also share our values and have this sort of cultural exchange and remember nature as being this grounding value that we share? And what does that look like, And today, I know this was kind of before we started, but you were talking to me about, like, where am I these days, And I'm everywhere. I get to see our village right now in the Four Corners and in Pescadero and Washington and Texas. And I hope that one day everyone gets to experience this village of, like, not only just what the solutions look like and how profitable they are, but, like, how peaceful it is to be in your body and in the village, on the land, with the songs of people, and also seeing the abundance on your plate, on your walk. It's truly a life-changing and embodied experience.
When is program Earth complete?
So our goal, is to essentially start off these pilots, get them validated, get each community pretty much going into that scale mode with the sustainable streams of revenue. And our goal actually started just for Turtle Island. So our whole thing was just like, we were following One Earth's thesis statement that 300,000 hectares needed to be returned into protected care. That would offset climate, a lot of the climate risk that we're seeing. So the goal was 300,000 hectares. But, the word has spread through a lot of, we get to be part of a lot of different indigenous communities and coalitions. And so now we have been getting requests, like already in Brazil, but also like Central America and, Micronesia. So I think originally we said 300,000 hectares on Turtle Island. But, we like to let communities lead. So we'll be complete when communities are like, okay, rest. Like, but until then, the heart will always beat for whatever elders and the next generations want from us.
Thank you, Manisha.
Thank you. A home.